Hey everyone, you're watching We Had That, and today I'm going to talk about the 1984 Secret Wars Doctor Octopus action figure from Mattel. As 1981 came to a close, Stan Lee had moved out to California to oversee some of Marvel's characters brought to life on television, like Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. I've read that Marvel Comics weren't selling as well as DC Comics in the early 1980s, but after looking at the actual sales numbers, it is extremely clear that Marvel was kicking DC's butt when it came to comic book sales. In the 1981-82 year, X-Men sold over 300,000 issues compared to DC's top book, Superman, which sold fewer than 150,000. Although some of Marvel's titles like Khazar the Savage and Micronauts stopped being offered at newsstands and were only sold at comic book stores, even those titles were still selling almost 130,000 and 120,000 respectively, which was higher than most titles from DC. In fact, Marvel had 23 of the top 25 selling titles in the 1981-82 year. Around this same time, the Mego Toy Company, who had been manufacturing both Marvel and DC superhero action figures for about the last decade, went out of business. Shortly after, DC signed a deal with Kenner, the makers of Star Wars figures, to work together on a line of DC action figures with power action gimmicks. By 1984, Mattel was 3 years into a huge hit toy line with their Masters of the Universe figures, but they were looking for the next big thing. With Kenner now working with DC for their Superpowers action figure line and corresponding comic book series, Mattel approached Marvel with the idea of a toy and comic book crossover, which would all be based around a huge event in the comic books that could help promote the new toy line. I'm sure that Kenner working with DC helped to make Marvel even more receptive when Mattel came in with their proposal. According to Toy Legend, and also mentioned by Marvel editor-in-chief at the time, Jim Shooter, a Mattel focus group determined that kids liked the word secret and war. So Mattel insisted that the toy line and corresponding comic book series have the title Secret Wars. Mattel also wanted Doctor Doom to look a little bit less medieval and more high-tech. But one of Mattel's biggest requirements was that the comic book had to include fortresses, vehicles, and weapons that could be made into toys and sold at a higher price point than the figures themselves. The first wave included 8 figures, 4 superheroes, Captain America, Spider-Man, Iron Man, and Wolverine, and 4 supervillains, Doctor Doom, Magneto, Kang, and Doctor Octopus. Marvel and Mattel promoted the toy line heavily in comic book ads and TV commercials. Judging from how many of these figures I see for sale today, I'm guessing that Mattel sold a lot of them. The Secret Wars comic book was a 12-issue miniseries written by Jim Shooter himself that would last for the entire year. The basic premise of the series was that a cosmic being called the Beyonder took a group of heroes and a group of villains, put them on a planet together, and pretty much told them to fight it out. Although not everyone agrees with me, I think the comic book was pretty decent. Even though the series was met with mixed reviews, there's no arguing that the comic books sold well. Despite a lot of kids apparently reading these comics, I'm not sure that anyone at Mattel read them because there were some strange choices made with the toy line, including the choice of characters they turned into action figures in Wave 2. I think their biggest odd choice was the toy line's gimmick, superhero shields with lenticular panels. Each figure came with a shield and several different pieces of cardboard that could be inserted into the shields, which would then change the image as you tilted the shields. All of the good guys had round red shields, and all of the bad guys had a square gray shield. Even though in the comic book, Magneto was included by the Beyonder with the good guys team, the Magneto figure came with a square gray bad guy shield. I can't remember ever seeing most of these characters use a shield in the comics or the cartoons, definitely not in the Secret Wars comic. I have seen Spider-Man make a shield out of webbing on several occasions, But Mattel didn't give Spider-Man a web shield. He just had the same round red shield that the rest of the good guys came with. Anyway, these lenticular shields for the figures never made sense to me, but for the most part, it didn't really matter. As a kid, you open the package, you throw the shield in a box and forget about it. Well, except for Captain America. His shield was kind of important. It would have been nice if they had included an insert for Captain America's shield that looked like, well, Captain America's shield. One thing that I think Mattel got right with the Secret Wars figures was putting a short comic strip on the back introducing us to each character. We already knew most of them, but for non-comic book readers and younger kids, I think it was a good idea. Each comic strip included a stat sheet letting us know the character's height, weight, and superpowers, along with a little short story that typically tied their shields in somehow. Typically, the characters would receive a secret message on the back of their shield. In Dr. Octopus's comic strip, he reads his message and then goes on to steal the heroes' shields. The Secret Wars line had the distinction of being the first time that Dr. Octopus was made into an action figure. Dr. Octopus first appeared in Amazing Spider-Man number 3 way back in 1963, so it was about time this guy got an action figure. The Secret Wars figures in general were mostly pretty basic, with most figures using one of two different body types, plus a unique head and a unique paint job. For the first wave, Captain America had a unique body sculpt, which was pretty subtle, so I'm surprised that Mattel actually went through the trouble of giving him an only slightly different torso and only slightly different arms. His flared boots were noticeable enough that it made sense to give him unique legs. Also, Iron Man and Doctor Doom shared a set of arms and legs unique to those two figures, and each of those two had different torsos from everyone else. The other figures were all the same body with different paint jobs, and in the case of Dr. Octopus, 4 tentacles attached to his torso. Although overall the Dr. Octopus figure wasn't bad, his tentacle arms were so fragile that most kids lost an arm or two, or maybe all 4, pretty early on after purchasing the figure. It's difficult to find loose figures today that aren't broken and missing the tentacles. I thought it was cool that someone finally made a figure of Dr. Octopus, despite his really not having all that big of a role in the Secret Wars comic book. In terms of the story, it would have made more sense for them to make a figure of Ultron, who played a much bigger role in the comic than Dr. Octopus. However, in 1984, I think more people were familiar with Dr. Octopus than Ultron, so if Marvel and Mattel had worked together a bit better, what really would have made sense is just to have given Dr. Octopus a bigger role in the comic book. All in all, despite their goofy shields, I think that Mattel's Secret Wars line is pretty cool, and despite the possible flaws, Secret Wars was a big step forward for toys based on the Marvel Universe characters. Also, this line provided a lot of kids with their first action figure for many of their favorite Marvel characters. What do you think of the Secret Wars toys? What did you think of them as a kid? Were they awesome action figure representations of your favorite Marvel characters, or cheap second-rate superpowers wannabes? Did you have a Dr. Octopus figure? Tell me in the comments below. Also, please give this video a like and share it on social media. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe to my channel and hit that notifications bell so that you'll be notified when I post new videos. As always, thanks for watching.